Here are our top 36 consensus rankings for the running back position for fantasy football in 2025. Danny, let's get it kicked off with the high-end RB1s. These guys, all three of them are in my top 6 overall players. Actually, in my top 4 overall players, I have Bijan, my 102, Gibbs, my 103, and Saquon Barkley, my 104 in half PPR, PPR type of formats. And let's talk about Bijan first because he's the easy one. Tier 1 running back, the running back one for me in my rankings, 20.1 PPR points per game last year, RB3 overall. He has a different quarterback. Michael Penix, we don't know what to expect. But Bijan is basically matchup proof, 72 targets last year, top 5 among running backs. Number 1 in weighted opportunities per game. And then when you saw that resurgence, you and I did that video week 4, week 5, go by Bijan Robinson. It's a generational wealth opportunity. We saw him really produce those 22, 23 plus points per game down the stretch last season, 1,800 total yards, 15 touchdowns. And that was with Atlanta kind of only being like a slightly above average offense with Kirk Cousins. So if Michael Penix is the real deal, then there's actually a bit of a ceiling for a little bit more out of Bijan. 23 years old, no injury history to worry about. A legendary season is absolutely within the range of outcomes for him.
Yeah, and typically we don't say, hey, draft your running back based off safety, based off security. But Bijan is like one of the rare examples this year when if you check every single box you would look for towards a league-winning running back, he checks off. You mentioned the workload. You mentioned the talent level, a generational running back prospect compared to guys like, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, guys like that in the rarefied air of the prospect area. And like you said, last year, he was already dominant down the stretch. Week 6 on especially, he was absolutely cooking. He's 23 years old, like you said, no injury issues. I mean, you put this case up, there's really no holes that you can poke into it.
Yeah, and there's no holes with Jahmyr Gibbs either, who's my 103 in drafts right now, 21.3 PPR points per game, RB2 overall at 22 years old in 2024. And as we touched on in the players we'd bet our lives on basically video, 53% to 51% opportunity share the last 2 years. The buzz is that he might be getting more work. David Montgomery may be working into more of like a backup role or a little bit less of a role than we've seen before. 27.4 PPR points per game when David Montgomery has been out. We know that median projection wise, this is a top 5 running back, a top 3 to 5 running back in fantasy. And again, we know that if he takes a step as a player again, gets a bigger workload, maybe Montgomery's hurt, we know that this guy can absolutely break fantasy football and be far and away, honestly, the best asset in fantasy. So Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, I think there's as much of an argument to take him 101. And I actually did it in one of my Great Dane drafts, a $250 entry contest on Underdog. I actually took Jahmyr Gibbs 101 to kind of go with a different texture of taking Jamar Chase.
Yeah, so you mentioned Bijan Robinson is, I believe, your 2nd overall player, RB1. He was actually my 4th overall player, RB2. With Jahmyr Gibbs, I do have Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1, 3rd overall player right now. And you kind of mentioned it, but I mean, you didn't even get the full picture too, because that also included the splits that you mentioned, 27.4 without Montgomery. That also includes what he was able to do as a rookie. Even if you just isolated, okay, 2nd-year player, got the uptick in workload, like it was even more apparent. In the weeks 1 to 14 prior to David Montgomery's injury, like you said, top 3 to 5 level projection, 18.2 PPR points per game on the back of 6 yards per carry, over 100 yards from scrimmage per game. But in the stretch without David Montgomery, 31.5 PPR points per game. The reason that I have Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1 off the board is, yeah, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, they were more consistent across the year last season, but you're banking in a year 3 player, the most efficient running back in the NFL, attached to an elite offense and plenty of meat left on the bone as a receiver. I mean, it's pretty funny that he got less overall receiving targets in 2024 than he did in 2023, but he was so efficient on them. Like he took 52 catches, turned it into nearly 520 receiving yards. I mean, you're getting the efficiency, you're getting the offensive insulation. And if we do see him rise, so in the splits with Montgomery last year, 13.69 rush attempts per game and 3.23 targets per game. So he was averaging 18.2 points per game with Montgomery on sub 17 opportunities per game. If that spikes up year 3, that goes more so to 19, 20 opportunities per game. We're talking about an untouchable ceiling. That's why I have him as my RB1 in fantasy. The ceiling is quite literally a new age Jamal Charles.
Yeah, no, he's been absolutely exceptional when he's been at his best, which has basically been since he's been in the NFL. And you could argue that Jahmyr Gibbs today is the best running back in football, and I wouldn't really argue with you too much, especially in full PPR leagues. We're hearing the split out wide stuff that he's going to get used more in the passing game. Saquon Barkley's the last guy in this territory. Maybe some people think he should be RB1 in fantasy. Maybe they should, think he should be the 101 even potentially in fantasy. Even when we contextualize that he was tackled on the 1 yard line 11 times in 2024, the season that he had at 22.2 points per game was exceptional, the rushing volume that we saw from him. But the major concern for Saquon Barkley and why he's behind these other guys is mainly that he's 28 years old and he does not have nearly the receiving ceiling, given that Jalen Hurts doesn't really throw much to his running backs, that Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson have. But he's still behind one of the best offensive line, probably the best offensive line in football, one of the best offenses, 11-plus win projection type of team. So Saquon, as one of the best running backs in football with this good of a workload on the ground, is still going to be great. But I would say in half PPR and standard, he's a little bit more appealing than he is in full PPR.
Yeah, and I would say unlike a Jahmyr Gibbs, where people might be mentioning, well, they lose Frank Ragnow to retirement. It's like Saquon Barkley just lost Landon Dickerson. I think Landon Dickerson being out of the lineup, given how Saquon Barkley wins, is more impactful than Frank Ragnow being out of the lineup for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely going to factor into his efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So Barkley, there's a case to be made that you take some of the receivers ahead of him. I know you have Lamb ahead of him. I go back and forth on a daily basis pretty much whether or not I want to put Lamb ahead of him. Jefferson, you could put ahead of him. So kind of a soft fade by us in terms of where he's going to go in your home leagues versus where we're actually taking him right now. Let's move into the late first rounder tier. I'll let you kick us off with Devon Achane, but we have Achane, McCaffrey, and Jeanty in this tier together as kind of like 1-2 turn type of picks.
Yeah, kicking this next tier off with Devon Achane. Maybe you're not lucky. Maybe you don't get a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Bijan Robinson, a Saquon Barkley following because they are pretty consensus in that top 6. You still have very good consolation prizes. With Devon Achane in the splits that he solely played with Tua Tagovailoa in 2024, he was actually outpacing Saquon Barkley, second-year player, each of his last 2 years in the NFL, first 2 years actually in the NFL. He's been a top 6 running back. He was a 17.6 point per game scorer last season, and he was number 4 in weighted opportunities at the running back position. You're getting elite receiving involvement. You're getting a potential uptick in his efficiency. Year 1, extremely efficient. Year 2, not as efficient. I do kind of see this being, a happy medium between. Maybe he doesn't get back to 7.7 yards per carry like he was as a rookie, but I also think he has more meat left on the bone as a rusher compared to what he showed last year. If you're getting, 220, 230 carries on top of potentially 80, 90, leading the running back position in targets, and you're able to get that on that 1-2 turn, I don't understand why Achane's not getting steamed up more.
Yeah, I have him in my top 9, so he's more of like a late first rounder, a mid first rounder for me, as opposed to a 1-2 turn guy. Christian McCaffrey is right behind him in my rankings, just 12 games last year, or 12 points per game last year in the Achilles tendonitis lost season that I'm sure a lot of you guys hate Christian McCaffrey for if you drafted him. The season before, though, he was a legendary running back. We know that upside still exists. I don't think the 49ers and McCaffrey himself, honestly, are going to be quite the level of dominance that they were in 2023. You think of what they had with Ayuk, with Debo, with Kittle, and McCaffrey playing all at their best. But McCaffrey is still going to have autonomy in the red zone, probably going to have a top 5 target share at the running back position. So even if you're not quite getting peak 2019 through 2023 Christian McCaffrey level play, I do think that mid RB1 is probably his median type of projection as long as he stays healthy. The question is, do you want to take the risk that he doesn't stay healthy because he's obviously older, has a lot of touches under his belt, and he is coming off of an injury? But by all reports, it sounds like he's healthy. There's not really any concerns with his Achilles tendonitis flaring up again, but we would have probably said that last year, and the 49ers hid a lot of valuable information from us.
Well, obviously last year, even when he returned, he ended up getting eventually rehurt. I believe it was the PCL strain. Correct me if I'm wrong. He suffered against Buffalo, but we did kind of see a vision for how the 49ers kind of want to approach the injury concerns from him when he played last year. Take his rushing efficiency with a grain of salt. Again, he didn't have a ramp-up period. He's coming off the Achilles tendonitis. I don't think he's going to go out this season and average 3.32 yards per carry. But like I said, we did get an outline. He played on 88% of the snaps when he was healthy last year, 14.33 rush attempts per game, and he had about 5.33 targets per game. And given the context of this receiving core, I do think that the 49ers are going to ask a lot on Christian McCaffrey's plate as a receiver. I think this is going to be a situation where maybe he doesn't go back to 18, 19, 20 carries per game like he was past in the 49ers scheme. But I also think if he can just be a 14-50 carry per game, 5-6 target per game back, he still has enough upside to pay off because we do believe in this 49ers offensive insulation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So speaking on Jeanty, I've brought up some concerns with the Raiders offense. They're projected like 6th, 7th lowest points in the league. But with Jeanty, you have a guy who ranked amongst the likes of Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley as a prospect. We all just turn on the tape of Boise State and know that this guy's going to be a superstar at the NFL level. It's a bet on the talent. It's definitely a riskier bet because he's never played in the NFL before. And I would say, generally speaking, the Raiders are not the type of offense I totally want to invest in, even if you are higher on Geno Smith than me. I think we can all agree that of the first round players, he has one of the more questionable offensive situations. But they're going to give him the ball like crazy. He was a top 6 overall pick, and he's probably slated to get an 85+% opportunity share, given that Raheem Mostert is his biggest backfield competition.
His 5 closest comps in the prospect model on average in their rookie seasons, 18.5 PPR points per game. And when you even contextualize that Bijan Robinson had a Tyler Algier, Christian McCaffrey didn't get the full workload, Jonathan Stewart, Cam Newton siphoning touches on the goal line specifically. The other 3 backs with Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, and who would be the other one? Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley. The average of those 3 guys was over 21 points per game. So it's not going to be congruent, obviously, each of them going into their own respective situations. But that is the bucket of talent we are dealing with Ashton Jeanty. And for that alone, I think he's got to be a lock top 15 pick. Maybe sure he's not going to be the top 10, top 11 pick in maybe some of your drafts because some people might be concerned about this offense. But I think at worst, he's got to be one of the first 6 running backs off the board in your league. And maybe you tie break to a Neighbors or a BTJ on that 1-2 turn. But like I said, the lowest I can see him going off the board, 14th or 15th overall in your league.
Yeah, I think Barkley's actually kind of not a bad comp for his rookie season because he had like kind of a washed Eli Manning as his quarterback. OBJ was the only real big weapon there. That's kind of what we have with Brock Bowers in the passing game with Las Vegas. So it's actually a very similar situation, I think, to Saquon Barkley's rookie season. You just hope he gets the receiving work that he got at Saquon Barkley's rookie season. That's how he got there with Eli checking the ball down like crazy. So hopefully Geno Smith is going to throw the ball to him. We could probably pivot into the next tier unless you have anything else on these guys. We have Derrick Henry and Chase Brown kind of in like a mini tier by themselves. I would say generally, I think that you could make the argument that some of the, other guys below Derrick Henry and Chase Brown might be in this tier with him. I'll get it kicked off with Derrick Henry and maybe why he's a mini tier ahead. I actually have him in the tier of Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey, and Jeanty, but on a consensus basis, he's a little bit lower for you. Running back 4 in running back points per game last year in PPR. Even in PPR, he had 19.8 PPR points per game, 1,921 rushing yards, 18 touchdowns. I will say that's kind of a high bar to average 5.9 yards per carry at 31 years old and produce that many scores. But I think we can all say comfortably that the Ravens will be a top 3 to 5 scoring offense, and he's going to have probably the most red zone attempts in the league.
So you implied that I have him lower than you. We actually have him at the exact same overall ranking, 16th overall. Correct me if I'm wrong. You have him?
Yep.
The difference would be I just have Chase Brown in this tier. I have Chase Brown at 17 overall. So really what it comes down to for me is Chase Brown and Derrick Henry were neck and neck. You kind of had more of a disparity between them. But going back on Derrick Henry, you would think, okay, older running back, he's going to wear and tear. He's going to be less efficient down the stretch of the year. And that would have applied to a lot of older running backs. Alvin Kamara kind of wore down as the season went along. But we do see older running backs as more carries get put on their workload. They don't average the same yards per carry that they did in week 1. Derrick Henry's the exception. In the last 4 weeks of the season for the Baltimore Ravens, 20.5 points per game and 5.97 yards per carry and 145.5 yards from scrimmage per game. When it got cold and Baltimore had to establish that run and protect leads late in the game, what were they doing? They're giving it to the belly of number 22 25 times a game.
Yeah, the big dog, it's December season every single time. He's always a great option in the late portion of the season there. And, week 17 against Green Bay will probably be no exception when they go up to Lambeau Field in the end of December, around Christmas time. It's going to be exactly what we all expect it to be.
Big dog in the frozen tundra.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chase Brown, you mentioned he's kind of in this tier for you. Chase Brown, we know that the kind of game split of week 9 onwards, he was a 20.9 PPR points per game guy. We've talked about him on numerous occasions in the players we bet our lives on. Here's a simple case. Zach Moss to the non-football injury list. 5.5 targets per game in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, in addition to 19 carries per game when Chase Brown was the starting back. Now, do I think he's going to have necessarily that level of workload? No, otherwise he'd be going in the first round. If he has 80 to 90% of that workload, he will absolutely pay off his ADP. The coaching staff's calling him Austin Eckler. He's a focal point of the offense, all that kind of stuff. Chase Brown, very easy mid-second round pick for us.
He just checks every, like I mentioned, Bijan Robinson, round 1 checks every box. Like Chase Brown, the only question that people can realistically have on him is, okay, he's not the talent level of Derrick Henry. He's not the talent level of Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. Like I get that, but he's got the offensive insulation. He's got the receiving work. He's got the coach speak. We saw how they wanted to use him down the stretch last year. They go out this offseason. Zach Moss not on the team anymore. They've said all offseason, hey, Chase Brown is one of the focal points of our offense. We want to feed him out of the backfield. We want to make sure that he is getting touches. And if the Bengals are anywhere close to how formidable they were as an offense last year, which is basically expectation going into 2025, I guess like people just aren't confident he can do it again. Like I genuinely don't know why the market is
number one reason for me, even as someone who's high on Chase Brown. I'm like, do I want to spend my second round fantasy pick on Chase Brown? Like he doesn't.
I would sleep like a baby doing it.
Go in the second round of fantasy drafts.
And I just disagree because I think he's a top 10, top 12 level talent. Yeah, sure, maybe he isn't one of the top 5 running backs in the league, but I think at worst he's an above average level talent. And when you just combine the situation around him, you combine the efficiency he showed last year, the scoring opportunities, like, dude, you can convince yourself, like you said, that this guy should be going in the first round, and we're getting the biggest discount in drafts right now. Like, if you can still get him in the third round of your drafts by the time your guys' drafts come around, his ADP is kind of at that 28 mark. He actually goes off the board per ADP after the next tier of running backs we'll talk about. And to me, he just stands up above that pack.
Yeah, he's kind of just the new age Kyren Williams now, where he's just going to probably get the volume on a great offense and have red zone autonomy. And of course, going back to both Kyren and Chase Brown's tenures in college, they were workhorse running backs, and Chase Brown a much better athlete than Kyren Williams and was getting great receiving usage, which we haven't necessarily seen from Kyren because he gets so much work on the ground. The next tier of guys we have kind of at that 2-3 turn: Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs. I can make the case for Bucky Irving as the Buccaneers fan here. Yeah. Bucky is going to have an opportunity to get a bigger workload this year because the 5.4 yards per carry as a rookie was excellent. 14.4 PPR points per game. From week 6 onward, he was an RB2 or better in every single game, except for the 2 games that he left early against Las Vegas, and he was kind of phased out of the game script in Kansas City on Monday Night Football. So post week 6, he was still kind of not a workhorse. He was only getting like a 49% snap share, 6.8 utilization score, which is like RB2 kind of usage rather than RB1 type of usage. And the coach speak has followed him a little bit this year where, yeah, he could get more work on third down. He could get more work in long down and distance in 2-minute drill type of stuff because Rachaad White's currently banged up with a groin injury, and Bucky Irving proved that he can get better at the things that he wasn't necessarily exceptional at Oregon by coming into the NFL right away, breaking tackles, making people miss, all this kind of stuff. It wouldn't shock me if he takes that step that he needed to take, which was getting better in pass protection, running routes a little bit more decisively. So another step from Bucky Irving, and this is a very similar bet to what we had with Devon Achane last year, which is you take the efficient rookie to take a step forward in the workload. Maybe the efficiency goes down, but the workload could go up to compensate for that.
Rookie's efficient, plays in a good offense that we like. And the only real concern is, can they take that next step in their workload? Like this is carbon copy what we were saying about Devon Achane last year. And yeah, sure. Devon
Achane, applied for years about rookie running backs who are efficient too.
Yeah, and I guess like is the concern people have, oh, he's 195 pounds. Can he really take on the brunt of an NFL defense? Like we hear that narrative come out every single year. And whether it's Tony Pollard, whether it's, Devon Achane last year, like how many other quote unquote undersized running backs, which by the way, the Pollard one was funny because like he's literally like 205 pounds. So he was never actually undersized, but people will see a non 220 pounder and instantly say, can he handle an NFL workload?
I mean, Kyren, Gibbs, Eckler, McCaffrey, like
it's so dumb.
If we got undersized running backs handling workloads.
It's the dumbest narrative that I've seen in fantasy. Like literally, if you're not 225 pounds and look like Jonathan Taylor, people will question if you can handle 300 touches.
Yeah, and ironically, guys like Jonathan Taylor are getting
they're the ones that wear down. So who knows? Maybe just less muscle mass means that you don't have as much wear and tear on you.
Yeah, no, for sure. You want to go Jake? Do you have Jacobs or Taylor ranked higher?
So let me check right now. I believe I have Jacobs one spot higher, but let me confirm. I have Jacobs right now as my 21st overall player, Jonathan Taylor as my 22nd. So they're back to back. I do have Josh Jacobs one spot higher. The nuts and bolts for Josh Jacobs, you're getting a big workload on an offense that we believe in. We did see him rebound in terms of his efficiency. Again, down 2023 season, that clicked back to 4.4 yards per carry in 2024. And really what you're betting on is the down stretch of the year, back half of the season, we saw a ton of touchdown equity for Josh Jacobs. And if Jordan Love is even healthier going to the year, the offense is more efficient. It's moving the ball at will. Like you're not betting on Josh Jacobs taking 1,800 rushing yards and, 70 receptions this year. You're betting on Josh Jacobs giving you 300 touches and 15 to 18 touchdowns from scrimmage.
Yeah, he's people could argue for sure because they scored almost identical last year. Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor got there in very different ways, as we know. Jonathan Taylor really great at the end of the year, not so great at the beginning of the year. Jacobs kind of consistent throughout. Jacobs had 36 receptions to Jonathan Taylor's 18, and Jonathan Taylor has been the more banged up of the two running backs the last couple of years. But Jonathan Taylor does have the advantage in terms of opportunity share. You have only a 66.5% opportunity share for Josh Jacobs last year versus 88.4% for Jonathan Taylor last year, which is number one among all running backs. He led the position in opportunity share. So he's the guy that gets the bigger workload, but he also has been the least durable. The only tiebreak that I have, which is why I have Jonathan Taylor ahead of Josh Jacobs, is that he's a running back one in his prime archetype, Jonathan Taylor, versus Josh Jacobs is into that trusty veteran territory who tend to kind of just be. It wouldn't shock me at all if Josh Jacobs was a silent killer this year and you draft him RB10 and he finishes RB16. Like, that's the type of season that I think is kind of the downside risk for Josh Jacobs. Whereas I think Jonathan Taylor is a little bit more boom bust because he gets injured a lot and whatnot. But I do think he still has top 5 ceiling in his range of outcomes. Whereas I don't know if Jacobs necessarily does have that ultimate 1900 rushing yard, 20 touchdown ceiling that I think Taylor might have.
And just for that, actually, I will make the change in my rankings. I'll move Taylor Jacobs to my 11 and Bucky Irving and Jonathan Taylor up one spot each. We're doing that on the fly because, like you said, like you almost need a guy that can be special in terms of his efficiency to pay off as a top 6 running back. And I don't know if, an efficiency outlier season is really in the range of outcomes for Josh Jacobs, whereas I can more so convince myself of that being the case with Bucky Irving and Jonathan Taylor. So yeah, I have more offensive concerns with the Colts. Yeah, I think he's not as safe of a pick as a Josh Jacobs, but I mean, if we're getting back Jonathan Taylor where he can get up to 5.1, 5.2 yards per carry because this offense is actually humming, like that is in the range of outcomes that I just don't see with Jacobs. So I will make that switch.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't think either of them. Like, it seems like Jacobs is safe, but a 27-and-a-half-year-old running back with as many touches under his belt as he has is not a safe pick inherently.
When he's healthy, he's safe. But like you said, like an older running back just inherently isn't safe. That was the wrong terminology for you.
No, I know, but I think it's good that you said that because I think a lot of people will have that opinion of Josh Jacobs. Oh, I feel great about him. He's super safe. He's going to get the work, all that kind of stuff. Well, we said that for years about Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb was never a guy that was finishing top 5 in fantasy points per game. And even though we've seen that level of ceiling from Jacobs, I just don't know we're going to see that 2022 Josh Jacobs again.
Well, exactly. We always talk about archetypal drafting, specifically in your early rounds. It's like you need access to a guy that after the season, everybody's going to be pointing he is the biggest regression candidate in fantasy. Like that is the guy like if you took James Cook in the 4th last year, you're feeling great because now everybody this offseason is like, that guy can't score 16 touchdowns again. Like that is the sole narrative. And we'll talk about Cook in a second, but you need access to that.
Yeah, you kind of want to ride the lightning on running backs a little bit. Who's going to have the great season? I think that the Colts could have a really good year and really surprise some people. And I think riding the lightning of Jonathan Taylor and maybe selling high on him after the season from a dynasty perspective is probably the way to go about things. So next year, guys, is kind of mid to late 3rd rounders for us. We made both kind of seismic changes in our 3rd round rankings, where before we were hammering wide receivers, still taking a bunch of wide receivers. Now we have those quarterbacks pushed up, those top 4 elite guys all in the 3rd round. We have these running backs pushed up a little bit more. George Kittle kind of at that 3-4 turn for both of us. Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, and Kyren Williams make up this tier. I can get us kicked off with Breece Hall because I do have him the highest of the 2 of us. He was RB17 in PPR points per game last year, which is obviously not great. 15.1 PPR points per game when you took him in the 1st round. But he did enter the year kind of banged up. It was dealing with injuries throughout the year. And Aaron Rodgers, the vibes there were absolutely terrible. The real thing that I think Breece Hall has going for him is that he's averaged at least 4.5 targets per game all 3 years he's been in the NFL, including his injury-riddled kind of seasons and last year included there. So when you're getting a guy who can legitimately be the number 2 receiver in his offense from a target perspective, it's really hard not to take that guy as a top 3 round player, especially again, from an archetypal standpoint. He's finished as an RB1 multiple times. Anytime he's been in healthy, he was an RB1 before his injury. His rookie season, he was an RB1 post ACL tear his 2nd season, and he's under the age of 27. So, he's in his prime still. He's in a contract year again, kind of riding the lightning of who do I think could be a regression candidate next year. I actually think Breece Hall catching like 90 passes could be something that we talk about next year as not repeatable, or something that we talk about if he signs with a new team or something as maybe a sell high in dynasty. I think you want to ride the lightning on Breece Hall. Like, ironically, his nickname is Breece Lightning. So I do think that he is a guy that I want to be in on this year, and I don't want to be kicking myself. No, like I had a 24, 25-year-old running back in his prime with an RB1 season staring me in the face with elite receiving upside in the 3rd round. And I passed on him because I was worried about his offense. His O-line is also much better this year than it was in past years.
I guess my concern more than you is that We've heard a little bit more about a committee this offseason. Again, I agree with you that Breece Hall is very clearly the most talented running back on this team. He should be the RB1. He should be the workhorse because he's just straight up better than Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. But we do see a split in the preseason where with the first team offense, all three backs got involved, and that is echoing kind of what they've been saying. So that made me a little bit more apprehensive. Again, I was a guy that I was willing to rank, Breece Hall 25 overall, 27 overall, because
he's still there for me.
The nuts and bolts of it is like, if he does pay off, he's got the upside to be an absolute league winner. I'm just having a little bit of hesitance. I don't believe in this offense, and I do think there could be potential threats to his workload that we haven't really seen in the last couple of years, because we literally saw it in the preseason week 1. Like I said, I don't know why the Jets just don't go and say, hey, Breece Hall, you are our best running back. We're going to give you 80% of the workload. Like, why do we feel the need to involve Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis when Breece Hall is just a better player?
Yeah, my opinion on that is that he might start slow because they do want to do that at the beginning of the year, but ball won't lie. Once we get to week 4, they're like,
just
we got to
trade him to the Cowboys.
80% of the touches again because he's clearly better than these guys.
Just trade him to the Cowboys because then you'd be a top 15 consensus pick.
Yeah, I do. That would be great for my Breece Hall bags if he became a top 20 pick or whatever in fantasy. But I'm still willing to do it. I know it's a bad offense. I know that Justin Fields is not somebody we trust. I think the receiving work's going to be there. And if he does lose a little bit of work in the red zone, on the goal line, whatever, I think it'll be made up for by the fact that he might lead the position in targets or at least be damn near close.
Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable take to have. He is actually my 3rd running back ranked in this tier. He's my RB14 overall, 36th overall player. The guy that I do have ranked as the number 1 of this group is Omarion Hampton. I think he kind of represents similar to Breece in the sense that you're getting that height, weight, speed, athletic freak, big play maker. Omarion Hampton, 220 plus pounds, size, speed, freak. And he's attached to an offense that we do believe in. I mean, you talked about how you've kind of, I would say, got higher on Justin Herbert as a whole as a fantasy asset. If he's using his legs more, maybe the offense is moving the ball more down the field. And Najee Harris, I mean, we may as well just nickname him at this point, Najee Harris. When is this guy going to play football again? Who knows? When is he even going to return to practice? Like, the guy's got his helmet off or a helmet on, working on his own on the side. Like, he's taking pictures and he's looking like Fetty Wap out there. Like, the vibes of Najee Harris right now are so bad. And conversely, Omarion Hampton has been treated like the team starter from day one. We saw in the preseason, he played the one drive, rested with all the starters after that. Omarion Hampton goes 22nd overall and represents the exact upside case that made Jonathan Taylor a league winner down the stretch in his rookie season. He's just simply a guy I don't want to miss out on, because people might say, well, if he starts slow, just go trade on him. Like, if you're in a competitive league and somebody drafts Omarion Hampton, I'm sure they're going to be willing to weather the storm if he doesn't start out the hottest. The reason why I want Omarion Hampton is because there is the very real possibility in the playoff weeks, he is one of the 5 guys that you need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got more of a receiving upside than Jonathan Taylor. I've talked about that before. If it weren't for the Rashawn Slater injury, I would have him at the number 1 of this tier as well. But I actually did for like a couple days there have him ahead of Breece Hall. But after the Slater injury, that was the one micro change I made in my rankings, is that losing one of the best left tackles in football could affect his efficiency, especially for a guy that I do think as a prospect kind of needs holes blown open for him, gap runner, guy that if you don't have good holes for him to run through, might not be as effective as he would be behind a really good offensive line. So losing their best offensive lineman definitely sucks. And that's why I moved Omarion Hampton more so to that late 3rd round as opposed to the early to mid 3rd round that I had him before.
Yeah, I have him in the mid 3rd right now. He's at 28 for me. I do have him a cluster. You mentioned the quarterbacks. I pushed up to 25 through 27. I did comparatively drop the receivers. And yeah, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and I believe, Kyren Williams is the guys that I have on that 3-4 turn. We'll go straight to Walker. We talked obviously Hall and Hampton. With Walker, same draft class as Breece Hall. And I think the allure of Ken Walker is he's a very elusive player. He thrives in a wide zone system, and that's exactly what Clint Kubiak wants to operate with the Seahawks.
Yeah, and Kenneth Walker saw a big-time bump in his receiving work. He was RB12 in points per game last year, which is the highest finish of his career, even despite being banged up. And the reason for that is because he went to 53 targets on the season in only 11 games that he ended up playing, and 4.8 targets per game in that situation. So Ryan Grubb, I think the pass volume will go down from what he was operating as opposed to Clint Kubiak now, but he's still just 24 years old. Again, another one of these cases that I think you could ride the lightning, and this is his best season of his career, and he goes and gets a big payday as a result. And I've actually heard a Seahawks beat reporter saying that he might stay in Seattle. They're working on a contract potentially for him. So Kenneth Walker, to me, in the 4th round, especially because that's kind of where he goes around the 3-4 turn area, if you can start your draft, man, with like Nico and Neighbors or BTJ and Neighbors, and then you grab Breece or
Daniels
Hampton,
and Kenneth
then
Walker.
you grab Kenneth Walker, and you can start a double hero RB of Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker with those two receivers. Like, as someone picking from that area of the draft in their home league, I feel great about a start like that.
Yeah, or even if you want to do a modified hero, you drafted those two at the top and you wanted to pair them with a George Kittle or a Jaden Daniels or one of the elite quarterbacks, like you're sleeping like a baby, because I do still think you can get a workhorse profile at the 3-4 turn this year. And speaking of workhorses, there was no bigger workhorse in the league last year when he was healthy. We talked about it on the preseason winners video that would have came out earlier this week, but the guy had 361 opportunities in 16 games this year, and then just goes out and signs a 3-year extension.
Yeah, Kyren Williams quietly over 350 opportunities, like you said, 16 total touchdowns as well. Like, Stafford is a concern for him, obviously, because he's a concern for Nakua and Adams as well. But as long as Stafford gets back to practice soon, and we did hear he was supposed to practice on Monday and didn't, and he was still kind of in civvies or whatever. So we need Matthew Stafford back out there. Bottom line, if Matthew Stafford, if he had no injury issues, I can absolutely make the argument that Kyren Williams belongs at least at the head of this tier, if not maybe even closer to Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to say, because I mean, realistically, what is the big difference between him and Jacobs? Like, I think Jacobs is a more naturally talented player, but they're both kind of, in that 4.0 to 4.4 yards per carry type of range.
Well, Kyren was really good in 2023. Who's to say he doesn't get closer back to that efficiency, especially because I was so high on this Rams offense. If it was just going to be moving the ball at will, I was definitely going to be willing to throw Kyren out there and maybe say, hey, 4.5 yards per carry plus is in the range of outcomes for him. But Alaric Jackson dealing with like blood clots, Matthew Stafford, not in a great spot health-wise. There's a lot of red flags around the Rams, and I do think Kyren does see the brunt of maybe, the efficiency bump that they could lose without Stafford and such.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the immediate appeal won't be there. Like, I don't think you're drafting Kyren with the expectation, he's going to be a top 3-point per game running back this year. But at the same time, I would almost be shocked if Kyren, if of course Stafford is healthy, didn't at least finish in like the RB 7 through 13 range. Like, I feel like I have him low compared to where he'll finish. It's just more so a couple of guys that I think have maybe access given the efficiency ceilings.
Yeah, I would hear
I like Kyren.
Someone to say that he's being drafted at his floor right now, which is like RB 13 to 15. Like, I don't think a healthy Kyren Williams with Stafford being healthy would finish much lower than that. Like, he was RB 11 PPR points per game last year and was like uber inefficient.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like, I think the range for him, like, I don't see a scenario where like he goes back to like a top 5 running back, just because like some of the profiles ahead of him, I feel like are just night and day.
He'd have to have a huge efficiency bump for that to happen.
But like, I would almost, like, conversely, like I said, be shocked if he wasn't in that 7 through 12, 7 through 13 type of range. So because of that, maybe you can argue, like you said, you're drafting him at his floor, because that's
and I'm very much okay. Like, if I, again, in my home league, I pick 3-4 turn area at that part of the board. Like, I'm very much okay with him with like my 404 or whatever if he were to fall back to me. At the 309 or whatever I'm picking, I think I could probably get some better options, whether it's like an elite quarterback or Breece Hall or Hampton or something like that. But at the 404, if he falls to me in that area of the draft, I'll absolutely be willing to take him there. The next tier of guys we do have is like 4th rounders, like consistent, just good 4th round picks. James Cook for me is actually in the tier above. If it was just my rankings, he would be in the tier with Kyren and Kenneth Walker and those guys, because
that's how Treveyon Henderson is for me here.
Let me ask you this. If James Cook signed a 3-year contract similar to Kyren Williams just signed, would he move up a tier for you?
No. Well, I mean, like, I have him and Henderson in this tier. Like, 12 through 17 is actually my tier. It's just you didn't have Henderson in there. That was the difference. And I have James Cook and Henderson. Like I have Henderson like a good bit above James Cook. I am a little bit more concerned than you are, because we just didn't see the opportunities rise in 2024 compared to 2023. Like, if we had saw even just the receiving volume like we did in 2023, I would say, okay, well, James Cook's got the opportunity to be the number 2 target on his team, and he's obviously got goal line equity, and maybe he sees some more carries. Like, I could have.
Don't you think there's outs for that stuff to happen though? Because that's my opinion on James Cook, is that we didn't see it necessarily, but I think there's multiple outs for him to hit, whether it's more receiving work, continuing the red zone stuff, getting a bigger workload. He's a running back 1 in his prime. He finishes an RB1 last year, and he's either in a contract year or about to be extended. For me, I just want to bet on guys like that, especially when they're in the number 1 projected offense in football.
Sure, I would agree. Very well we could see a resurgence in receiving usage. We could see more overall carries, but I also don't think we get near 16 rushing touchdowns again last year. Like, the guy had 4 in his first 2 years and had 16 last year. Like,
why not?
I mean, we talk about positive regression, negative regression. The guy had 16 rushing touchdowns last year after having 4 in his first 2 years.
Well, let me ask you this.
Played
Were you and
17
I
games.
high on James Cook with the expectation he would get more red zone work last year?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. But when I said red zone work going up, it wasn't, 16 rushing touchdowns was the expectation. It was, okay, can he get more than 2 touchdowns? Like, that was the difference. He was a positive regression candidate after 2023. I think conversely, he's a negative regression candidate in that regard going into 2025. He got comparatively a ton less work. I mean, we're talking about, 291 opportunities in 2023, dropped to 245 in 2024. Realistically, for me with James Cook, there's no doubt in my mind he's one of the most efficient players in the league. There's no doubt in my mind that they want to use him. But I also did see they want to use Ray Davis. They want to use Ty Johnson. James Cook's workload just comparatively isn't up there with some of the running backs that I am taking in this range.
Yeah, I guess I just view him as cheaper Bucky Irving, where it's a great offense. I want pieces of it. He's efficient. He catches the ball. I don't know why he got like 48% of the snaps last year.
38 targets last year.
I think if they extend him especially, like there's room for him to go up, even if he loses some touchdowns to regression. Let's say he only has 12 touchdowns this year instead of 16. If he has 10, 15% more snaps per game, I do think he can be a better pick as a result of that. So for me, I just think there's multiple outs, and he's a RB1 finisher who's still in his prime, who's really efficient, attached to the best offense in football.
Yeah, I mean, the nuts and bolts of it are like he's a very efficient player. He's got high spike week upside. My concern comparatively, like you said, like the overall situation is there, but if he's not getting within 100 opportunities of some of the running backs in this range, that is my cause of concern. On top, like if he was like, for example, I have Treveyon Henderson ranked higher, we may as well go into him next. If James Cook had a 80, 90 plus target ceiling, I would be fine with him. The issue for me is when I look at Treveyon Henderson, I do see that 80, 90, 100 target ceiling based off what we have heard and based off the fact we saw James White finish as an RB1 with less than 500 rushing yards. So to me, it's like you mentioned James Cook, efficient player attached to the Bills offense. Well, I think Henderson is a similar bet in terms of an efficient player attached to an offense we believe in, except he's actually got the receiving role that we've hypothesized for James Cook.
Yeah, the 54 targets in his second year was great for James Cook, but we haven't seen that level of target upside yet. I tend to think that there's a little bit more meat left on the bone there because it's not like there's a bunch of great options in this offense. It's not like Khalil Shakir, who was Josh Allen's go-to guy last year, is going to start the season banged up. What if that affects James Cook positively and he catches more passes split out wide into the slot, whatever the case is? So for me, it's like, do I think he has the same target upside as Treveyon? No, because I think Treveyon has like 100 plus target upside. I think James Cook could have 70 plus targets though.
He's peaked at 54. Maybe he gets split out more, but I would think conversely, if he gets 70, 80 targets, I think that's more so indicative that Ray Davis is handling more between the tackles carries.
Maybe.
I think they're mutually exclusive.
Semantics with James Cook. I just think I'm willing to overlook said semantics because he's a really good player and a really good offense.
Yeah, and I like James Cook. I think if you want to take him in the 4th round, it's reasonable. It's just for me, I would rather bet on Treveyon Henderson because I know if he could be James White with 200 carries, which is the upside, given the talent level, given the draft capital, given everything we've heard so far from Josh McDaniels, I just want to be aggressively high on Treveyon Henderson. And you guys might be commenting, well, why don't you just take James Cook in the 4th and Henderson in the 5th? It's like, if you can do that in your league, do it in every single one.
Yeah, you probably can in most leagues, especially if you pick near the other end of the board. If you're picking and James Cook were to slide to you kind of in the mid 4th round as opposed to the early 4th round, you could probably grab James Cook and then circle back around and grab Treveyon Henderson. The case for him is very simple. It's like Drake May, we believe in. Treveyon Henderson has 80 plus target upside. We already saw an exceptional player in the one snap and touch that he got, which is that he housed it for a 100-yard kickoff return touchdown in the preseason. So, and the tough thing for me on Treveyon Henderson is that I think he just turns into Alvin Kamara if it turns out really well for him, because Kamara, as bad as the offense is this year, it was bad the last 2 years, or at least below average at the very least the last 2 years. He has some offensive line upgrades. They've taken offensive tackles 2 straight years in the first 2 rounds. And Kamara's finished as RB5 and RB3 in fantasy points per game the last 2 years. So when you just look at the pure production with him, it's so hard not to rank him higher than this even, because the last 2 years he's been like a high value over replacement running back. And especially if you're getting that in the 5th round, like we're not expecting Tyler Shuck and Rattler to check the ball down like crazy, because I am.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think ultimately the reason why I do prefer Treveyon Henderson is given the ceiling, because we did see Alvin Kamara wear down the stretch last year. Like after, he had that huge game against the Cowboys. He started the season extremely hot. Everybody was saying, I mean, including myself, are the Saints the new San Francisco 49ers? Because obviously they're running that Kubiak run scheme. But We did see him slow down tremendously from an efficiency perspective as a rusher. I believe it was week 5 on is when we started to see it against.
He still had a bunch of great games in fantasy,
he
though.
did. No, like, again, don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's a fine running back. I have him as a top 48 overall player. It's just for me with Treveyon Henderson, imagine you're getting that Alvin Kamara that just doesn't wear down. Like, the concern that I have for Kamara wearing down doesn't exist with a rookie running back.
You're right, but it also exists that Ramondre is a pest all season long. And the other thing
I just don't view that.
The other thing I could argue for Alvin Kamara is that did he wear down, or did he just stop playing because the team was completely out of the playoff mix and they were starting Spencer Rattler? Like, he also had a terrible quarterback situation last year.
Is that all that different to this year? Like, who's to say week 4 he doesn't get checked again and now he's useless in fantasy? Like, you know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. I mean, my thing though is, like, you watch the Saints quarterbacks the last 10 games of the year, right? Like, they can't be worse than that this year.
I mean, have you seen training camp so far? Like, every beat reporter's talking about how all the quarterbacks suck at this point. Tyler Shuck, did
New Orleans score more than 10 points one game the last season? Like, after the week 10 onward?
I'm curious, but like, if we check the box
I guess
score,
my ultimate point on Kamara is that it's been so bad already and he still produces.
Well, and that's the thing. If you want to draft Kamara and then trade him before the eventual fall off come week 4, week 5, when he's maybe the RB4 in fantasy, it's like, I think that's valid. It's just, for me, if I'm ranking a guy knowing, hey, I am, putting my eggs in this guy's basket, I want, come playoff time, this is going to be a guy that's going to be in my lineup each and every week that I think can attain that high-end RB1 level status. Like, to me, Treveyon Henderson represents that. I'm more willing to, I guess I'm more willing to endure maybe the slower start than the eventual fall off. Like, to me, they're almost like the inverse, where I'm going to have Kamara ranked higher in my week 1 rankings, but I'm almost guaranteeing that Treveyon Henderson will be a top 5 to 8 running back in my rankings come week 17. Whereas Alvin Kamara, I don't know what the offensive situation is going to look like at that point. So realistically, Kamara, you want to take him in the 4th round, reasonable 47th overall player. I would just rather shoot for more upside, which is why I prefer Henderson.
Yeah, and the last point I'll make on this is that in 5 of the first 11 games, the Saints scored less than 20 points. In every single one of their last 6 games, they scored less than 20 points. So yes, the offense can be bad again, but I do think that it could be marginally better, like a top 30 offense in the NFL instead of it might be one of the worst in the league. Just don't get me wrong, but like New Orleans throwing the ball 90 times to Alvin Kamara is death taxes, and Kamara getting a 90+ target season.
I guess part of it too, it's like, maybe, you're not worried about Devin Neal. You're not worried about Kendrick Miller. You're not worried about backfield touch behind him. Because like Kamara will be the RB1. He will be a workhorse. But like, is it really sustainable giving him another 310 opportunities in 14 games?
I guess the ultimate thing I disagree with that you've brought up is that I don't think he wore down. I think the offense and the team was just so bad that he took himself out. Like, he's like, I'm a veteran. He also could get dealt at the deadline as well.
Yeah. I mean, who's taking that contract?
I think New Orleans, and then they trade him away for a pick.
But that's like
they're a tanking, rebuilding team. They'll take on the money, and the Cowboys or the Bears or something would trade for the actual player.
I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. I just think if you're one of those teams, like, why wouldn't you go after maybe a younger, more appealing running back on the market?
Well, because Breece Hall or Etienne might not be on the market. The team might want to keep them.
And maybe, who knows? Again, I'm not against Kamara. Like, I do have him in my first 4 rounds. I have him in my top 48. It's just, like, he is solely to me, I need to fill touches early, so I'm going to grab Alvin Kamara. And there's no problem with grabbing touches early. It's just when it comes at the expense of maybe a Treveyon Henderson, or he's not going above Omarion Hampton, but I can see in some home leagues maybe somebody preferring Kamara to Hampton. It's just, I would rather swing on the guy that can win me my league. Yeah,
I guess I'm speaking mainly on a sharper league standpoint where he's like a 5th round pick, where I'd be comfortable taking him, more than comfortable taking him at that point in time there. So the next year, guys.
One thing.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I'm speaking more so in the lens, like, in our leagues, like, he's a very good, valuable target for us. But in the leagues that say, oh my God, he was the RB9 last year, Alvin Kamara, proven commodity, it's like, in those leagues, he might be a top 36 pick. At that point, that's just a little steep for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the next tier of guys we have kind of like right in the midst of what the old RB dead zone was, the 5th, 6th round. Isiah Pacheco, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, DeAndre Swift, and RJ Harvey. My favorite guys in this territory are Pacheco and Swift, because Pacheco, obviously former RB1, RB11 in points per game last time he played a healthy season for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we saw in those first 2 games before his injury, he was actually getting more routes, was getting more targets, was getting more 3rd down and long down and distance work. And it's the Chiefs, man. They're going to be a top 5, 10 projected offense. They're going to have a top 10 projected offensive line. They're going to have Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football and throwing the football around the yard, probably with Worthy and with Brown and with Rice now healthy. So I feel great about Pacheco. He's literally one of my highest drafted, if not my highest drafted running back in underdog drafts right now. I think in terms of entry fees, because I've drafted him on like all my big dogs and my big money contests, I think he is actually my highest entry fee drafted running back on the entire platform. And him and Swift both, because I like Swift too, is they are running back ones in their prime because they've formerly finished as RB1s and they're under the age of 27. Chicago, really up and coming projected offense, as we've talked about. Roschon Johnson not getting a whole lot of buzz. If Roschon was going to be an issue, I think we'd hear a lot of drumbeat about that. If Menengai was going to be a major issue, I think we'd hear a lot of drumbeat about that. And I just do think that we're going to get another top 20 season out of DeAndre Swift on a much better team than he was playing for last year.
Yeah, I see that being the case with DeAndre Swift. If he does get the workload, we do believe in Ben Johnson, the additions to the interior offensive line. It's like, if you're only going to take at face value how inefficient of a rusher DeAndre Swift was with Shane Waldron and with a terrible Bears offensive line, you're just kind of doing him a disservice. Like, sure, is there the possibility with Roschon Johnson, like maybe siphoning some goal line carries with Kyle Monangai working into the mix? Yeah, like that is going to exist. But if that wasn't going to exist, you'd be having to draft DeAndre Swift much higher.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a guy that we're pretty sure is good enough in fantasy. Is he the best real life NFL running back? No, because he bounces runs all the time. But like, he's finished as a top 24 running back in points per game every year of his career.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that with DeAndre Swift. I think this is a valid range for him to be in. You mentioned, this whole list with Isiah Pacheco, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, and RJ Harvey. Who do you have ranked highest of this list?
I have Pacheco ranked the highest of this list, and then Chuba Hubbard is ranked right behind him. I think you have Conner the highest, so if you want to go on Conner and make the case for him.
Yeah, and it almost feels like a 180 because obviously I've been like a staunch anti-Conner guy before, but I mean, everything we are hearing from this coaching staff, Conner's the guy. We believe in this run scheme. We believe in how the offensive line performed last year. And James Conner himself is coming off of his best season. So like Kamara, do I feel confident in projecting a full 17 weeks of Conner? Do I feel comfortable in having this guy on my fantasy team throughout the season? Probably not. But we're drafting and redraft for a reason. You know what you can do in redraft? You can make trades. If Conner gets out to a hot start, he is one of the most tradable assets, especially in more casual leagues, because people are going to see the workload. People are going to see he's been a successful running back in the past, and he is my perfect consolidation piece. Conner plus whatever sleeper wide receiver does well in the first few weeks, can you go and tier up and get a big dog?
Yeah, Conner's a great option for that. I go back and forth on him a lot because obviously I'm not really factoring in Trey Benson to be a major part of this backfield because they haven't really said anything that indicates that. Yeah, they're like, hey, we'd like to get Trey a little bit more work and that kind of thing. But it's more like, hey, when Conner's tired, he'll get more work, not like he's going to actually eat into Conner's workload. My major hang up with Conner and why I can't really rank him much higher than this is that he is 30 years old. He does have thousands of touches under his belt. He has, suffered some injury issues in the past. And I don't want to be the guy that's a year too late on the fall off than a year too early. So I'm kind of ranking him a little bit conservatively. I have him at 21, which I'm still going to get some shares of him, especially in best ball when he slides a little bit. But I don't want to be overly in on a guy like James Conner, who, I could rank him just based on where he finished last year and rank him like RB 15 or whatever and get so many shares of this guy. And then this is the year that he falls off. Father Time's undefeated. I don't want to factor that in too much for James Conner because he hasn't shown any signs of decline, just like Kamara hasn't really shown any signs of decline. But at the same time, I don't want to be super in on him either.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He's just an early season touches play at the end of the day. Like that is what it is. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I think that's what the 4th, 5th round should represent at the running back position, because it's not like we're propping up a Mike Davis who we think can get the touches like we were in the past. Like, no, we have a pretty good certainty that at least in the first month of the year, these guys are going to be ranked in the top 12 to 15 of our running back rankings. So as a result, they're going to be clear sell high candidates because unlike best ball, it's not like you're stuck with these guys throughout the entire 17 weeks.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's so much to like about James Conner in managed redraft where you can move off of him if you need to. And to me, the reason I have Chuba Hubbard higher is because Chuba Hubbard is younger, has an RB1 season under his belt. So archetypally, if that's a word, he's a better bet in terms of historical hit rate. He's an RB1 in his prime as opposed to a trusty veteran like James Conner. Second in snap share last year when he got the full workload, which is like week 4 onward. So to me, I got a guy with a huge workload. Maybe Rico Dowdle factors in a little bit more, but whatever Rico Dowdle factors into, let's say we shave off of his 82% snap share, we shave off 15%. He's a 65, 67% snap share guy. I think Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers offense that we saw week 11 onward, week 12 onward is the offense that we're going to see this year. Bryce looks great. T-Mac looks great. Leggett, Coker, all these guys probably taking a step forward. And I do think whatever work Chuba Hubbard loses, he'll probably make it up in terms of efficiency, in terms of touchdown scoring opportunity, because he finished as RB10 last year. And there was like 10 games in which the Panthers were a non-functional offense.
Yeah, I guess my issue would be we do see the workload cut. He wasn't efficient as a receiver. Rico Dowdle worked in those third down, long down and distance situations. Like, I do see a sizable chunk of his receiving game being off the table. And I mean, they also have Trevor Etienne.
Part of his workload anyways.
I mean, he had 54 targets and 43 receptions. Like, it wasn't a non-factor.
It wasn't nothing. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't nothing. But don't you think part of why he wasn't efficient as a receiver was, think about it as a former defensive player. Chuba Hubbard was the offense. If they were throwing the ball and Chuba Hubbard was out in space, aren't you just rallying to the football on a guy like that when they had no other threats on that offense at the time?
It's not about his efficiency on it. It's more so I think he's just going to lose those snaps altogether.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. That's definitely fair. But I don't know. I got a guy who's in his prime who averaged 4.8 yards per carry and finished as an RB1 on an offense that was non-functional for the first portion of the year. I just think if this offense is a top 15 scoring unit, I wouldn't be shocked. And I do think that Chuba Hubbard, I talked about James Cook kind of being the cheaper Bucky Irving. I think Chuba Hubbard is almost the cheaper Jonathan Taylor. Where I think the offense could be a breakout unit, and I like the early down guy with the big workload.
I guess I wouldn't go that far. I think maybe like Kenneth Walker. Like, it's probably how I
cheaper Ken Walker would make some sense.
Ken Walker, where it's like you're not getting an elite receiving ceiling, but like also, like I said, like even if he loses some work in that regard, like 54 targets, even if that's split to 35, it's like we've seen Kenneth Walker get there with efficiency as a rusher and not have a ton of receiving work. I guess it's just my thing with Chuba Hubbard and why I do have him ranked at 22 behind some of these guys is, I mean, we'll talk about RJ Harvey in a second. Better offense, better offensive line, more upside as a receiver. That's why I prefer RJ Harvey. You do have the rookie factor as well. Isiah Pacheco, I mean, if this Chiefs offense is humming and this guy's healthy.
Pacheco ahead of him too.
Yeah, we agree on that. But like, if he's healthy and this Chiefs offense is humming, like we both believe that he can be a 3-down workhorse because that was the intentions that they had for him prior to him getting hurt. I just have him after these guys. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I'm I guess a lot higher on him because I have him and Pacheco in the tier with Treveyon Henderson and Kamara because, like I said, I also have James Cook in the tier ahead with Kyren and those guys. But I'll let you take it away with Harvey, and then we'll probably go rapid fire for the last couple of tiers just because I don't want to be here too long talking about like back-end RB2s and high-end RB3s. So I'll let you make a longer case for Harvey, and then we'll just rattle through the last couple.
Yeah, I don't have to spend too long. I mean, in preseason week 1, he did dominate the overall snap share. We do have the Allure offense we believe in. Bo Nix, Sean Payton, like what they did in his rookie season, very impressive. It's a team that's implied for a top 10 level total according to the sports books. And if RJ Harvey does have a potential 3-down workload, like I do think J.K. Dobbins will be a factor. I do think this is going to be more of a committee. But even if you're getting potentially 60% of the work here, I believe in Sean Payton enough. And I also think another factor here is outside of Cortland Sutton, I mean, we're getting Marvin Mims reports of him being the wide receiver too. What is stopping this backfield from leading the league in combined overall targets? Like J.K. Dobbins included, don't get me wrong. I don't think RJ Harvey's going to dominate the target share out of the backfield, but I also think the running back position collectively could have a 100 target type of workload. Yeah,
no, I don't disagree with you. And the one thing with Harvey is that I want to see it for one more preseason game before I believe it, because there was some reports about J.K. Dobbins, like all this bullshit about him. The other thing about this backfield in general that I think might be under thought of, and I actually feel the same way about the Steelers backfield too, which we'll talk about in a second, is that I actually think there will be a third player involved. And I think that Jaleel McLaughlin might be taking away some of the third down, long down and distance stuff, the same way it sounds like Kenneth Gainwell might do the same thing in Pittsburgh with Kaleb Johnson and Jalen Warren. So that's the thing that I'm factoring in with both RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, not just a pro J.K. Dobbins because I'm the J.K. Dobbins guy. I actually do think it's possible this is a 3-way committee as opposed to a 2-way committee between those top two guys. But if Harvey posts another good game of preseason usage, then I do think I'll start to move him up the rankings a little bit. But let's talk about this next tier, guys. We got B-Rob, Kaleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery. We got 3 veteran guys, Steady Eddie touches, Brian Robinson, early down guy for a great offense. Tony Pollard with Tajay Spears banged up with the high ankle sprain. He sees an upgrade, a guy that can get carry another 70+% opportunity share, at least at the beginning of the season. Very similar, kind of cheaper James Conner in that way, where you could sell him after the first couple weeks. And then David Montgomery, definitely lower than where he's been in the past. But as we talked about earlier, we think that Gibbs is going to take that extra step, in Montgomery more of like a high-end handcuff, with a great standalone role kind of thing.
Yeah, B-Rob Montgomery, your power backs with touchdown equity. Kaleb Johnson, the rookie that, while we are scared a little bit about the offense, we believe in the upside. Top 5 level running back prospect for both of us. If he does end up getting the RB1 workload, you're getting a little bit of a value there. But the reason why he's not on the level of the Harvey and the other rookie running backs is the concern of the offense. And Tony Pollard, I mean, he's like the worst version of James Conner, the worst version of Alvin Kamara. Like, do you want to be rostering Tony Pollard in week 17 of your fantasy league? Probably not. But he's a guy that if you have him in the first month of the year, will probably get you some wins, probably.
Yeah, and I was still pro Spears over Pollard before the injury. Just at
Can't
cost,
be there now,
especially because you were getting him cheaper. But now I can't get there because of the injury. It's got to hurt Spears a little bit and help Pollard a little bit. So I don't want to draft Tony Pollard, and I probably won't still. But I do think he's more viable, especially in home leagues.
Yeah, and even prior to that, on the first drive, I mean, with the starters in week 1 preseason, 79% of the snaps, like, I want Tajay Spears to get that role, but it's up to the coaching staff. And who knows, maybe once he comes back from injury, we do see a closer split or eventually Tajay Spears take over. But no doubt in my mind, come week 1, come week 2, come week 3, like, this should be the Tony Pollard bell cow show.
Yeah. And we can move into the next tier of guys, the 9th+ round guys that we're not really that excited about drafting for significant touches, but there's appeal to all of these guys. Joe Mixon,
He'd be a lot higher.
If he wasn't hurt right now, he would probably be right ahead of James Conner, right behind James Conner, give or take, in that territory if he was fully healthy and ready to go. But because he's got the foot injury, he's also got a shit ton of touches under his belt. So you never want to see a guy like that come into the season with a major injury. And as we've detailed before, I mean, he fell off down the stretch of the season as well, just like you said for Kamara. It was actually way worse for Joe Mixon. He fell off big time down the stretch. And the Texans offensive line might be literally ranked 32nd in football by every favorite offensive line source that you guys have. So I don't think he's going to be overly efficient. It's not like Nick Chubb is, going to be great either. It's not like Woody Marks is a major
Dameon Pierce season.
But it's just, there's nothing exciting about this run game in general to me. So the more exciting guys in this territory are Etienne and Tracy because they're younger. Etienne has the running back 1 season under his belt, and Tracy has at least an RB2 season kind of under his belt last year.
Yeah, all jokes aside, imagine like Nick Haley is like, yeah, no, I Dameon Pierce, you will be my new Kyren. Like, all jokes aside, like that'd be hilarious. But yeah, you mentioned Travis Etienne. We believe in Liam Cohen, 3-down skill set, worked almost exclusively with the starters. I don't think at this point we can bet on an efficiency bounce back. I mean, who knows? Maybe we do see it, but realistically, the thesis is just the cheaper version of what Rachaad White represented last year. Like, that's what you're
like I have. So maybe I don't have Etienne placed correctly in this tier because I have Etienne over Pollard and Montgomery, but I assumed you didn't, and we didn't actually talk about where to place Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, that probably would have been a little bit valid.
I actually forgot that I moved him up after our skyrocketing video on Tuesday.
Yeah, that would have been a factor. I mean, he's my RB32, so I do actually have him in this tier.
Okay, so I'm at 26, so I'm a lot higher on Etienne because of, like I said, the archetype is why I'm higher on him. I think he's getting the early down snaps right now. He played 7 of 8 routes, 100% of the snaps with Trevor Lawrence, and he has that RB1 season under his belt. We know he's been good in the past. It's just that last year, I don't know if you can be as bad as Travis Etienne was last year and still gain your job. Like, you got to prove it in camp. You got to prove it in actual games. So my bet is just that maybe we see a bounce back from a guy who has been very efficient, has been very good, who was a very good prospect. I know it's not really relevant 5 years down the road, but he's been like over the last 8 years of Travis Etienne's life playing football. That season last year was much more of an aberration than the other seasons.
Yeah, and then moving to the next guy, I mean, Tyrone Tracy. I actually do have comparatively higher than you. I have Tyrone Tracy, if I check right now, as my RB29. So I do have
he's at 30 for me, so he's right there.
Okay, so we're a similar page there. With Tyrone Tracy, no Camp's got to be right now, being treated as the first team running back. Yeah, sure, they showcased, Devin Singletary in that first preseason game. Like, they were a relatively split, even snap share with the first team. But we do have to contextualize that Tyrone Tracy played, I believe it was the first 5 snaps with them. He got all the touches, and it almost felt like Devin Singletary was more so a showcase for him. The team knows, hey, I got Cam Scottaboo, I got Tyrone Tracy. Like, these are the 2 that I want to get the majority of my touches this season. So can I, maybe get a desperate Cowboys, a desperate Bears to try to trade for a Devin Singletary? Like, I think that is the metagame that they were kind of operating with.
Yeah, no, it definitely could be. And I don't really disagree on anything on Tyrone Tracy. The 2 Vikings running backs are a lot closer for me now than they were at the beginning of the offseason. I thought it was going to be the Aaron Jones show, but like, when I go through in our draft guide, I add up all the fantasy news for each team, and it's like drumbeat for Jordan Mason, and I gotta make an adjustment at some point. Like, Aaron Jones, 31 years old this year. Not necessarily probably going to profile as a guy you want to give a huge workload to. If healthy, I think he's still the starting running back, but starting running back might mean 55-60% of the opportunities. And I do generally not love his price tag, knowing that he is a huge name and has been very productive in fantasy before. And in home leagues, like on Underdog, it's really close. Like the price tag between Jones and Mason is basically the same. Let me ask you this. But in home leagues, it is a little bit of a wider discrepancy, and you're getting a nicer discount on Mason.
So you have Etienne ranked higher than Aaron Jones.
Yep.
But why though? Because the Vikings have a better run, or like I would argue, again, the Jaguars run scheme is phenomenal, but like
I think the Jaguars run scheme is better than the Vikings.
You would put that up with the Vikings?
Yeah, Cohen's better run caller than Kevin O'Connell, in my opinion.
Well, he's okay. We'll say even / slightly preferring for the Jaguars. Even when you contextualize that, Aaron Jones was the more efficient player last year despite his older age, and you don't have a Tootin in the backfield as well. Like you have a Mason. I kind of equate to, how Etienne and Bigsby operate, but with Bigsby and Etienne, there is a Tootin. There is no Tootin with the Viking situation. So I do think you have to have Aaron Jones higher personally. I do have Aaron Jones as my RB28, and I have Jordan Mason, I believe, is my RB31. So like they are relatively close. It's just for me, like the fact that there is no Tootin should be a tiebreaker.
I don't even know if the Jags think there's a Tootin right now, because I'm not hearing a whole lot of buzz about him. So that's kind of how I'm playing it, is that Tootin's the 2026 play as opposed to he's a this year play. And I have Bigsby and Etienne ranked aggressively. Here's the other thing. Like I said, archetypally, I'm taking RB1 over in his prime over trusty veteran any day of the week. And role wise, I think Jones and Mason do very similar things. There's not a clear path to me of how I don't think there's a clear path to me of how Jones separates himself from Mason. Whereas Etienne, if Tootin's not a factor, is a much better receiver than Tank Bigsby and could catch a lot of passes as a result of that. Even if he only commands 175 to 200 carries, I think he could have 70 plus targets and be a mid PPR RB2 as a result of that. He kind of reminds me a little bit of what we thought of like DeAndre Swift the last 2 years.
So your argument is Mason is just a much bigger threat than Bigsby is, whereas my argument is Aaron Jones is just the far superior, more efficient player than Etienne is.
I think Bigsby and Mason are equally as big of threats as each other. I'm drafting both of them, Etienne and Bigsby, and I have them both ranked aggressively as if they could each be the starter. But I think that Etienne and Bigsby can coexist more than Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones because I think they do different things.
Yeah, no, we'll see what ends up materializing. Fascinating discussion regardless. I mean, let's just really close.
No, I mean, Dobbins, if you don't believe in Harvey, you draft Dobbins. That's kind of where I'm at
Jalen
with it.
Warren.
I want the discount on Dobbins right now. Jalen Warren, if you don't believe in Kaleb Johnson, you probably are drafting him. Zach Charbonnet, he's a handcuff to Walker, and Walker's currently banged up. And then Dylan Sampson is the placeholder for RB36 for us, just because, I mean, Judkins is still not at practice, still not signed with the team. The more that Judkins is not there, the more that Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson become appealing. Jerome Ford, the early season play, but because this is a territory of running back where you're talking about like double-digit round picks anyways, I will take Sampson over Ford because I'm not looking for touches at this point in my draft. I'm looking for upside swings, and Dylan Sampson could by week 3, by week 6. If, let's say, Judkins is out the whole year or most of the year or something like that, by week 5, week 6, maybe Dylan Sampson's the starting running back for this team or carves out like a major receiving role even early in the season.
Yeah, I really like Dylan Sampson, the prospect. Obviously, there's the underlying factor, which Quinshon Judkins' situation right now, we can't really predict. But if Sampson is even, let's just say he starts as the 1B because Jerome Ford's got the tenure with the team and he's going to get the early carries. Do you really just want the guy with the first opportunity at this backfield or the one that could actually make a difference in this backfield?
Yeah, you want the guy that can make a difference, especially on a pass-heavy offense who's going to be losing a lot of games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a very real possibility that the Browns are throwing the ball 600 plus times this year because do they really have a choice given the situations they're going to be in?
Yeah, especially the leader in the clubhouse for the starting quarterback is also really old and not mobile.
Yeah, shout out Joe Flacco.
Yeah, so that is our top 36 running backs. A little bit longer of a video, but hopefully we touched on everybody that you guys really have to spend a consequential draft pick on. Who did we miss? I mean, we touched on Tank Bigsby. He would have been like the very next name we talked about. Tajay Spears, if he wasn't injured, probably would have been on this list. Javonte Williams, any Cowboys running back that you believe in could have maybe been on this list. Quinshon Judkins, assuming he's back with the Browns at some point, would have definitely been on this list. And then Trey Benson, some of the other handcuffs, Isaac Garendo, if he wasn't hurt. Guys like that would maybe fill out the rest of it. Rashad White, also another really good handcuff who's banged up right now. But top 36 running backs, let us know what you guys think. Who's too high, who's too low. Check out our season pass if you guys want all of our rankings, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, top 200s, best ball rankings, super flex, home league rankings. So home league ADP from Sleeper, Yahoo, NFL, ESPN compared to our rankings so you can see the best values per platform that you're playing on. All of that is available in our draft guide, which is available via the season pass. Use the promo code FSC on flockfantasy.com to sign up. You'll get a $35 season pass instead of a $50 season pass, and you get the draft guides, the bonus content of all your other favorite creators in the Flock League. So check that out if you guys are interested. And of course, if you do want to take advantage of some of these draft values that you guys maybe heard us talk about today, you can go to Underdog Fantasy, which is down below at the bottom of the screen there. You can see, use the promo code FSE for a deposit match up to $1,000, 50%. You put in $50 on the site, you'd have $75 to play with. And you can do some drafts. Best Ball Mania 6 closing up in the next couple of weeks. $2 million to first place if you can take it down. $15 million in total prizes. Definitely. I want to spar Mike Tyson to get ready for my home league mates. I don't know about you. That's what we give the analogy all the time. If you practice on Underdog, you will be really, really ready for your home league because this is the best ADP. It's the sharpest ADP. Hundreds of thousands of drafts, literally in paid money leagues, have happened on Underdog already. So it is very refined, very sharp ADP that you can use. Honestly, like I shouldn't maybe be telling you this because we obviously make money off of rankings and selling products and stuff, but you could probably just bring Underdog's rankings to your draft and draft better than 95% of your league.
Yeah, obviously, you're coming to us because you trust our opinions, but it is the sharpest market for ADP for a reason. And to be honest, we even apply that with our own rankings. Like if we notice, hey, like the underdog market is maybe higher than we currently are, why would they be higher? Well, like it's a motivational source for us to realize, okay, what's right and what's wrong with our rankings and kind of not backtrack it, but check with it.
Yeah, it checks us if we're way too low on a player who the sharps are taking very high. But anyways, all that stuff is linked down below in the pinned comment. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. Only about 40% of you guys subscribe to the channel who are watching these videos. Got to change that, become a GOAT, and subscribe to the channel. And comment any of your thoughts down below. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.